So Bell Hotel in Epping, we're now familiar. Isn't it funny? Nobody had ever heard of the Bell Hotel half an hour ago. Now we all know the Bell Hotel. It wasn't even a hotel until, well, ceased being a hotel years ago. It's been an asylum hotel for a long time. This isn't new. But now we know it's no longer going to be an asylum hotel because the council went to court and the court said, yep, the planning permission that was granted was not sought properly. It's not about, no judgment on this said, yeah, we agree that residents shouldn't be forced to live alongside people who've come from a third world country. It didn't say that. It didn't say we think there's been a disproportionate amount of crime coming from that hotel, therefore we sympathise with the council. It merely was the technicality of the fact that the change of use of the hotel was not legally sound and therefore a temporary injunction was issued. So following it on for other councils is going to be tricky. Kemi Badenoch is urging more councils to fight back. I think one leader of a reform county council is writing or suggested that, because it doesn't happen at county council level, it happens at town council level. I think they've urged town councils to also look at this one. But can they have any success? Let's speak to Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Afternoon to you, Tom.
Ian.
It's a difficult one, this, isn't it? Because naturally there is a sense that it's set a precedent, but it's sort of legally it hasn't really. But sometimes perception is stronger than reality. It might just be the thing that turns the kind of screws onto the system to start acting on this.
No, absolutely. I think this decision in terms of the Bell Hotel in Epping, it's like the first crack in the edifice, and I think it's only going to spread and spread. It remains to be seen whether or not this particular injunction is going to be, appealed quite forcefully in the courts. It remains to be seen if it is going to kind of set a precedent, legally speaking, that could cause a real headache for Labour. But I think in a way it's quite clearly bigger than this, that because of the protest, because of the public interest in this story, because of the fact this has suddenly become not just a local issue, but a kind of national issue, the government can't get away with allowing these hotels to continue. They were already in the process of trying to clear them out, but I think more and more pressure is now going to be exerted, not least from their own councillors in Wirral and Tamworth and elsewhere are talking about seeking their own injunctions themselves.
Yeah, and it's interesting, as you allude to, Labour-run councils as well. This is not just a kind of mad sort of Tory thing where they're suddenly jumping on a bandwagon despite being the party that were in power when much of this was happening. Labour councils too.
No, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's going to become more and more clear for the government is that this isn't just about the hotels either. I mean, we've seen protests in recent weeks in places back in Hampshire where you had Suella Braverman addressing protesters there. That was about a block of flats that was being turned over for asylum applicants. It's not that people are just particularly attached to their local bed and breakfast. It's that they have an issue with unvetted men being put in their communities. In the case of the Bell Hotel, there were 5 schools in that area. And then, in the space of just a couple of weeks, we saw 2 serious charges for sexual assault being issued against residents of those hotels. So it's not purely, I think that the nature of this government is to be quite technocratic and everything's about a spreadsheet. It's like, oh, if we deal with the hotels issue, it will calm down. I don't think people are going to put up with that. And as much as they try to push this problem around, it will just create more problems for them.
Indeed, and just to sort of compound the nightmare for the government, literally a day later, the Home Office released the figures of how many asylum claims there's been in the last year, which sort of rather backs up people's concerns. 111,000 people claimed asylum in the year to June 2025. I mean, these are such enormous numbers. We tend to sort of forget, Tom, in a way, because we see it similarly with the Channel crossings, 10,000 here and another 2,000 this week. We've seen it relentlessly, week in, week out, even in the winter, those boats keep on coming. We've sort of got used to these big figures, but it is worth just having a moment to pause and dwell on the sheer enormity of what we're talking about. 111,000 people claimed asylum. 32,000 asylum seekers currently housed in the taxpayer-funded hotels we just mentioned. This is a crisis.
Well, no, absolutely. And it's something which now really can't be ignored. I mean, the question of obviously illegal migration and people entering the country illegally, other routes were exploited previously, since they got on top of the issue of lorries and the Channel Tunnel. It moved over to the small boats, but literally no one was coming in via that route not too long ago. And yet now tens of thousands of people. We hit that milestone the other week, didn't we, where under this Labour government 50,000 crossings had taken place, the first time that has been surpassed by any Prime Minister. And there's still 30,000 people in those hotels. I mean, the number has actually ticked up over the past year, even though the government is really focused on trying to deal with this specific issue. And I think what's happened now is that the public have noticed something that the government really wish they hadn't noticed, which is that asylum, because it's become so dysfunctional, it's basically become a funnel in no small part for illegal migration, and quite a dangerous one, in that it does nothing to smear everyone who's in one of those hotels or suggest that they're all in it for the wrong reasons. But a non-negligible proportion of people who would enter a country illegally may well commit another crime. They might well be fleeing charges in another country, and we've seen that totally time and again. So now that the public have noticed it, they can't unnotice it, and that's have to deal with.
Absolutely. And when people say, well, it's just a minority, I mean, that's never an argument. You know, if you look at any nefarious act, whether it was carried out by a government en masse or whether it was a criminal cartel, I mean, the minority argument is a sort of anti-intellectual one, really, because it's always a minority. And the fact is, we don't know who those people are, we don't know which part of the minority they are, and we don't even know who they are, or often where they even came from, which is an extraordinary position to be in, that you got 111,000 people who were claiming asylum, 32,000 in hotels, many thousands more who are in, you know, B&Bs and homes of multiple occupancy, those kind of things. And we don't know anything about them. I mean, that's an extraordinary place for a 21st century economy, a country like first world economy like ours to be in.
No, absolutely. And I think you're exactly right about the kind of statistics and the kind of gaslighting which takes place. I mean, if we're talking about the issue of sexual violence, full stop, does it deal with the question, say, well, most men don't commit sexual violence? That doesn't mean you don't have to look at the issue. And in quite the same way, of course, the vast majority of people, even those entering the country illegally, are not going to be, you know, committing sexual offences as soon as they get here. There's nothing kind of congenitally wrong with them. Yeah. It's just the fact that we have a system which is open to abuse by people who are keen to abuse it. And probably the worst thing is there have been a number of cases now of people being granted asylum after they have committed sexual offences in this country. Abdulaziz, you remember the Afghan acid attacker in South London last year. He had committed 2 sexual offences before he was granted his asylum. So we knew who he was.
Extraordinary.
And yet we allowed him to stay here. So that's how insane things have got.
It's often said, or well, I've certainly often said it, Tom, that the problem that this government has, I mean, the last government had a big problem with it, and maybe there are more similarities than perhaps some care to acknowledge, but it doesn't appear to be, it's not in the DNA of the Labour Party to feel, tangibly sense what is going on here and therefore act on it.
No, exactly. It's that thing where they're so desperate to look good, they end up doing some absolutely terrible things. Yeah. And even if your starting point is that you care primarily about the welfare of refugees, migrants, whatever label you want to put on them, this system has become so dysfunctional. I think you could easily say it's a menace to the people caught up in it as well. Not only are they kind of languishing in hotels for years on end, you know, coming over to Britain for the great bounty of being able to work in the black market, but also there's been a lot of cases, the Abdulaziz case, the acid attacker, the woman and her children that he attacked were refugees themselves. There have been various fires started in refugee hotels by residents of those hotels because a lot of these people are quite disturbed. There's all kinds of issues. They're unvetted. So this is a menace to almost everyone caught up in it, I think. And so the Labour Party are incapable of dealing with this, but purely because they cannot bring themselves to say anything that might be interpreted even a little bit as slightly anti-asylum. But they've really got to get over that if they're going to deal with this issue.
100%. Listen, Tom, great to have you on as ever. Thank you, Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. If you've never checked out Spiked Online, do so. It's got such an array of great columnists and writers, all kind of vying for some, you know, really just those areas of life that we talk about here, and vying to encapsulate that public mood on that and doing it brilliantly. It's a place that speaks your language, I can tell you that much.